The rooftop was 8 stories above the street. Riley Bennett stood at the edge, hands zip-tied behind her back, looking down at the concrete far below that would kill her the moment she hit it. The cartel enforcer, a man who called himself El Fantasma, pressed the barrel of his pistol against the base of her skull. "You American spies think you are so clever, breaking into our building, stealing our files, but now you learn what happens to spies who get caught." Riley didn't respond. She was calculating. 8 stories, roughly 80 feet. Terminal velocity for a human body falling from that height would be about 50 miles per hour at impact. Unsurvivable under normal circumstances. But Riley Bennett wasn't operating under normal circumstances. She was a Navy SEAL, and SEALs trained for situations that would kill anyone else. "Any last words?" Riley smiled. "Yeah, you should have checked my background more carefully." "What is that?" She threw herself backward, using her body weight and momentum to slam into El Fantasma. He stumbled, the gun went off, the round screaming harmlessly into the night sky. And Riley kept moving. She ran for the edge of the roof, not away from it, toward it. "She's jumping! Stop her!" El Fantasma screamed. But Riley was already airborne, launching herself off the 8-story building with her hands still bound behind her back, falling toward the street that would kill her if she hit it wrong. The cartel enforcers rushed to the edge, watching in shock as the American woman plummeted through the darkness. They were expecting to see her body splatter on the pavement. What they saw instead would become legend. 80 feet. Riley had maybe 2.5 seconds before impact. Most people would panic, flail, scream, hit the ground in whatever position they happened to be in, and die instantly. Riley Bennett was not most people. She'd spent 6 months of her life in BUD/S, basic underwater DEMOLITION/SEAL training, learning to function in situations that killed untrained personnel. She'd been drowned, frozen, sleep-deprived, and pushed past every physical and mental limit. She'd learned that the human body could survive incredible trauma if you understood the physics and controlled your response. Falling from 8 stories was just physics, and physics could be managed. She rotated her body in midair, using core strength and momentum to control her orientation. Feet down, always feet down. The human leg bones could absorb tremendous impact if aligned properly with the force vector. But 80 feet was too high for a feet-first landing on concrete. Even with perfect technique, her legs would shatter, her spine would compress, internal organs would rupture from deceleration trauma. She needed to break her fall. The building she'd jumped from was part of a commercial complex in Medellin, Colombia. 5 seconds of pre-mission reconnaissance had shown her what was around it: awnings, fire escapes, power lines, adjacent structures. She tracked her fall trajectory. There, 12 feet to her left, a canvas awning covering the entrance to a ground-floor restaurant. It wouldn't stop her completely, but it would slow her descent enough to make the final impact survivable. She twisted in midair, using her bound arms and body position to steer toward the awning. It was like skydiving without a parachute, subtle body movements that shifted air resistance and changed trajectory. She hit the awning at 40 miles per hour. The canvas tore, but didn't give way completely. The metal frame bent but held. She crashed through, the awning acting like a giant airbag that absorbed maybe 60% of her momentum. Then she hit the ground, a rolling fall, absorbing the remaining impact across her shoulder, back, and hips. Pain exploded through her body. Something cracked, ribs maybe, or collarbone, but she was conscious, moving, alive. The cartel enforcers on the rooftop stared in disbelief. The woman they'd thrown from an 8-story building had just gotten to her feet and was running. "Get her!" El Fantasma roared. "She's still alive! Get her!" Riley ran down the Medellin street, hands still zip-tied, body screaming in pain but functional. She needed to get distance, break the restraints, and reach the extraction point 3 blocks away where her team was waiting. Behind her, she heard the screech of tires. The cartel was mobilizing. They had vehicles, weapons, numbers. She had broken ribs, bound hands, and a 2-block head start. Most people would consider that an impossible situation. Riley considered it a tactical challenge. The streets of Medellin at midnight were a maze of narrow alleys, steep hills, and crowded buildings. Riley used all of it. She cut through an open-air market, scattering vendors and shoppers, vaulted over a motorcycle parked on the sidewalk, slid under a closing security gate just before it locked shut. Behind her, a black SUV screeched around the corner. Cartel enforcers leaned out the windows with assault rifles. "There! Killer!" Gunfire erupted, rounds sparked off the pavement. Riley dove behind a parked car just as the windshield exploded from automatic weapons fire. She needed to break the zip ties. With her hands bound, she couldn't fight, couldn't use weapons, couldn't even properly balance while running. She found what she needed, a chain-link fence with a sharp edge where the metal had been cut and left jagged. She positioned her back against it, found the zip tie with her fingers, and began sawing the plastic restraint against the sharp metal edge. The SUV roared closer. She had maybe 20 seconds, 15 seconds. The plastic was weakening but not breaking. 10 seconds. She could hear men shouting, coordinating their approach. 5 seconds. The zip tie parted. Her hands were free. Riley grabbed a loose brick from a pile of construction debris and waited. When the first cartel enforcer came around the corner, she threw the brick with the accuracy that came from thousands of hours of training. It caught him in the face. He went down. His rifle clattered to the ground. Riley grabbed it, a K-47, fully loaded familiar weapon. Now the tactical situation had changed. 3 more enforcers came around the corner. Riley was already moving, using the parked cars for cover, engaging with short controlled bursts. 2 went down. The 3rd took cover. More vehicles were coming. She could hear sirens, Colombian police responding to reports of gunfire. She needed to extract before this turned into a 3-way firefight between cartel, police, and one extremely pissed-off American SEAL. She ran. 2 blocks to the extraction point. Her ribs screamed with every breath. Something was definitely broken. But SEALs trained with broken bones. Pain was just information. It could be managed. She reached the plaza where her team was supposed to be waiting. Empty. No vehicle. No backup. Her radio crackled. She'd lost her primary comms during the fall, but the backup unit in her pocket had survived. "Ghost 1, this is Ghost 2. Where are you?" "Extraction Point Alpha. Where the hell are you?" "We got pushed back by Cartel QRF. Heavy contact. Can't reach your position. You need to get to Extraction Point Bravo, 3 blocks north, 3 blocks, through cartel territory, with hostiles actively hunting her, while injured." "Roger, moving to Bravo." "Ghost 1, be advised, cartels put the word out. Every sicario in the city is looking for you. You've got a bounty on your head. They're calling you La Sombra Americana, the American Shadow." "How much?" $500,000. Riley almost laughed. "Should have asked for more. I'm worth at least $1 million. This is serious. They're flooding the zone with shooters. You need to ghost, disappear, use the training. Copy that, going dark." She switched off her radio to prevent tracking and assessed her situation. Dozens of armed hostiles between her and the extraction point. Colombian police swarming the area. Broken ribs limiting her mobility. And she'd just survived an 8-story fall and stolen a cartel rifle after being thrown off a building with her hands tied. Most people would consider this impossible. Riley considered it Tuesday. The thing about SEAL training, specifically the parts that never made it into recruiting videos or Hollywood movies, was that it taught you to be invisible. Not literally invisible, but functionally invisible. How to move through hostile territory without being detected. How to blend into environments where you didn't belong. How to become a ghost. Riley moved through Medellin like smoke. She ditched the AK-47, too conspicuous, and picked up a jacket from a clothesline, changed her appearance, adopted a different walk, different posture, different energy, became just another person on the street instead of a fleeing target. Cartel sicarios passed within 5 feet of her, scanning the crowd for the American woman. They were looking for someone running, someone scared, someone obviously out of place. Riley walked calmly, phone to her ear like she was having a conversation, browsing shop windows like a local out for a late-night stroll. She was hiding in plain sight. 2 blocks, 1 block. The extraction point was a parking garage where her team had positioned a backup vehicle. She just needed to reach it without getting spotted by the army of cartel enforcers flooding the area. "There!" someone shouted. "La Sombra Americana!" A Sicario had recognized her. Maybe the walk was wrong. Maybe the disguise wasn't perfect. Maybe he'd just gotten lucky. Riley ran. She vaulted over a market stall, crashed through a restaurant's outdoor seating area, shouldered through a crowd of late-night pedestrians. Behind her, gunfire erupted as the cartel enforcer opened fire without caring about civilian casualties. The parking garage was 50 meters ahead. She could see it, almost there. A black SUV cut her off, blocking the entrance. 3 men with rifles jumped out. Riley changed direction, sprinting for the stairwell that led to the garage's upper levels. The Sicarios followed, their boots pounding on concrete. She reached the 3rd level. The backup vehicle was supposed to be on the 4th level, but she was being pursued too closely. She needed to break contact, lose the pursuers, then reach the vehicle. She found what she needed, the parking garage's edge overlooking the street below, 3 stories down, about 30 feet. The Sicarios burst into the parking level, weapons raised. "Nowhere to run, puta!" Riley looked at the edge, looked at the pursuers, looked at the street below where a delivery truck was parked. "You know," she said, "people keep underestimating what I can survive." She ran for the edge and jumped, 30 feet. Not as high as the rooftop, but still enough to break bones if you landed wrong. Riley didn't land wrong. She aimed for the delivery truck's canvas cover, similar principle to the awning that had saved her from the 8-story fall. She hit the canvas at 30 miles per hour, crashed through it into the truck bed full of what felt like bags of grain or flour, rolled to absorb impact, and came up moving. The truck driver was staring at her in shock. Sorry about your truck." Riley jumped out and ran before the Sicarios on the parking garage level could process what they'd just seen. She reached the garage's vehicle ramp, sprinted up to the 4th level, and found the backup vehicle, a nondescript sedan with diplomatic plates. Her team was waiting. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, her swim buddy from BUD/S and current team leader, was behind the wheel. Chief Petty Officer Sarah Kim was in the passenger seat with a rifle. 2 other operators were in the back providing security. "Get in," Webb shouted. Riley dove into the back seat. The sedan was moving before the door even closed. "You jumped from a parking garage?" Kim asked. "3rd time tonight I've fallen from something tall. I'm getting good at it. You're insane." "I'm a SEAL." "There's a difference." Riley winced as the adrenaline started wearing off and the pain from her injuries became more prominent. "Also, I think I broke some ribs." "You think?" Webb accelerated hard, taking corners at speeds that made the sedan's tires scream. "Riley, you jumped from an 8-story building. Of course you broke ribs. Probably fractured half your skeleton." "Ribs for sure, maybe collarbone. Definitely some soft tissue damage, but everything still works." She checked the rifle Kim handed her, HK-416, loaded and ready. "What's our route to the airfield?" "Cartel's blocking the main roads. We're taking side streets and hoping we can break through before they close the net." "They put a bounty on me. $500,000. "We heard. Every Sicario in Medellin is looking for you. You're the most wanted person in Colombia right now." "Should have asked for $1 million. Kim laughed despite the tension. "Only you would negotiate your own bounty while running for your life." The sedan hit a checkpoint. Cartel Sicarios had blocked the street with vehicles. "Hold on!" Webb punched the accelerator, smashing through the makeshift barrier. Gunfire erupted behind them. Riley leaned out the window and returned fire, precise 3-round bursts that made the pursuers take cover. "How far to the airfield?" 3 kilometers, but they're setting up more checkpoints. We might have to fight our way through." "Then we fight." Riley reloaded. "I didn't survive 2 falls from high places just to get shot in a car chase." The route to the airfield turned into a running firefight. The cartel had mobilized everything, dozens of vehicles, hundreds of armed enforcers, roadblocks on every major street. Webb drove like he was playing a violent video game, using every bit of the sedan's performance to evade, ram, and outmaneuver the pursuing vehicles. Kim coordinated with their air support, calling in the extraction bird. Riley and the other 2 operators provided suppressive fire, keeping the pursuers at bay. Checkpoint ahead, Webb warned. Ram it, Riley said. It's reinforced. R-A-M-I-T. Webb floored the accelerator. The sedan hit the checkpoint at 70 miles per hour, smashing through the barrier in an explosion of metal and shattered glass. The windshield spiderwebbed but held. They were through. Airfield, 1 kilometer, Kim reported. Behind them, at least 5 cartel vehicles were in pursuit. Automatic weapons fire raked their sedan. Rounds punched through the trunk, the rear window exploded, the back seat turned into a death trap of flying glass and metal. Riley kept firing. Her HK-416 ran dry. She grabbed Kim's backup weapon and continued engaging. The cartel wasn't going to let them reach that plane, not without a fight. The airfield appeared ahead, a small strip used for charter flights, now serving as their extraction point. A C-130 transport was on the runway, engines running, rear ramp down. "There's our ride!" Webb aimed the battered sedan straight for the runway. The cartel vehicles followed. This was their last chance to stop the Americans. They opened up with everything they had: rifles, machine guns, even an RPG that streaked past and detonated against a hangar. The sedan hit the runway doing 60. Webb drove straight for the C-130's open ramp. "This is insane," one of the operators shouted. "It's Tuesday," Riley shot back, still engaging the pursuers. Webb hit the brakes at the last possible moment. The sedan skidded up the C-130's ramp, smoking and sparking, coming to rest inside the cargo bay. "Go, go, go!" Riley shouted to the loadmaster. The ramp began closing. The C-130's engines roared. The aircraft started its takeoff roll while the ramp was still rising. Cartel vehicles swarmed the runway, firing desperately at the accelerating plane. Rounds pinged off the armored hull. The C-130 lifted off, climbing hard, banking away from the airfield. Riley collapsed against the cargo webbing, finally allowing herself to feel the pain from her injuries. Broken ribs, possibly fractured collarbone, dozens of cuts and bruises, extreme soft tissue trauma from 2 separate falls. But alive. Mission complete. Intelligence gathered, 0 friendly casualties. Webb sat beside her, equally exhausted. "You jumped from an 8-story building." "They threw me. There's a difference. And you survived." "SEALs don't need parachutes. We just need physics and the will to control it." "That's not in the training manual." "Should be. I'm writing a recommendation when we get back." Riley winced as the C-130 hit some turbulence and her ribs protested. "How long until we're out of Colombian airspace?" 20 minutes, then we're clear." "Good. I need medical attention and possibly a new skeleton. This one's a bit dinged up." Kim came back from the cockpit. "Command wants a sit rep. What do I tell them?" Riley smiled through the pain. "Tell them the mission was successful. Intelligence recovered, enemy facility infiltrated, and when the cartel tried to kill me by throwing me off a building, I survived, stole their weapon, fought through half of Medellin, and made extraction on time. Standard Tuesday for a SEAL." "They're going to want details about the 8-story fall. Tell them I controlled my descent, used an awning to break momentum, executed a rolling fall to distribute impact force, and stayed operational despite injuries. Textbook application of BUD/S training." "You realize you just became legendary, right?" Webb said. "The SEAL who survived being thrown from an 8-story building. The cartel's calling you La Sombra Americana. That's going to stick." "I didn't do anything special, just applied my training to an unusual situation." "Riley, most people would have died the moment they hit the ground. You survived 2 different falls, fought your way through hostile territory, and made extraction under pursuit by dozens of armed hostiles. That's not just training. That's exceptional." Riley looked out the C-130's window at the Colombian landscape falling away below. Somewhere down there, cartel enforcers were trying to explain to their boss how the American woman survived an 8-story fall and escaped through the city despite their best efforts to stop her. She hoped they were having that conversation very carefully, because the next SEAL who came through Medellin would benefit from the reputation she'd just built. The reputation of someone who couldn't be killed by something as simple as being thrown from a building. SEALs didn't need parachutes to survive falls. They just needed training, physics, and the absolute refusal to die easily. Naval Special Warfare Command, San Diego. Riley sat in the debriefing room with her left arm in a sling, her torso wrapped in compression bandages over 3 cracked ribs, and enough painkillers in her system to make standing upright challenging. Commander Patricia Reeves reviewed the after-action report with an expression that oscillated between impressed and horrified. Petty Officer Bennett, you jumped from an 8-story building. I was thrown, ma'am. There's a distinction. With your hands zip-tied behind your back. Yes, ma'am. You fell 80 feet, hit an awning, landed on concrete, and not only survived but remained combat effective enough to fight through hostile territory while being pursued by dozens of armed cartel enforcers. The awning broke my fall significantly, ma'am. I only hit the ground at maybe 15 to 20 miles per hour. Survivable with proper technique. Proper technique. Reeves set down the report. Bennett, falling from 8 stories is not a technique covered in any SEAL training I'm aware of. Bud S. teaches us to function in situations that would kill untrained personnel, ma'am. I applied those principles to an unusual circumstance. You then jumped from a parking garage. 3 stories, ma'am, significantly less distance, and I aimed for a truck bed, which provided cushioning. You jumped from a parking garage, Reeves repeated, because it was the tactically sound option at that moment. Yes, ma'am. The alternative was being captured or killed by cartel enforcers. Jumping was the better choice. Reeves studied Riley for a long moment. The cartel put a $500,000 bounty on you. I was thinking of negotiating for more, ma'am, but circumstances didn't allow it. Despite herself, Reeves smiled. The intelligence you recovered was excellent. The cartel's financial networks, their trafficking routes, their political connections, all of it is actionable intelligence that's already being used to dismantle their operations. Glad the mission was successful, ma'am. It was successful because you completed the primary objective even after being captured, thrown from a building, and pursued through hostile territory. Reeves pulled out another file. You're being recommended for the Navy Cross. Riley's eyes widened. Ma'am, I don't think... The Navy Cross is awarded for extraordinary heroism in combat. You infiltrated a hostile facility, recovered critical intelligence, survived execution by being thrown from an 8-story building, fought your way through enemy territory while injured, and successfully extracted under fire. If that doesn't qualify as extraordinary heroism, I don't know what does. Ma'am, I was just doing my job. Your job doesn't include surviving 80-foot falls. That's something extra. Reeves closed the file. The cartel thinks you're some kind of ghost, La Sombra Americana. They're telling stories about the American operative who can't be killed. That's valuable. That reputation makes our next operations easier because the enemy is already afraid. Happy to contribute to psychological operations, ma'am. How are your injuries? 3 cracked ribs, fractured collarbone, extensive soft tissue damage. Doctors say I'll be fully recovered in 6 to 8 weeks. And you'll go right back into the field. Yes, ma'am. That's what I do. That's what SEALs do. Reeves stood, extending her hand. Outstanding work, Bennett. You proved something I don't think anyone's proven before, that SEALs really don't need parachutes to survive. We just need physics and the will to control it. Riley shook her hand carefully, mindful of her injuries. Should I write that up as a training recommendation, ma'am? God, no. I don't want every SEAL jumping off buildings thinking they'll survive because you did. You got lucky. I got trained, ma'am. And I applied that training to an unusual situation. Lucky, Reeves repeated firmly. Exceptionally skilled and well-trained, but also lucky. Don't let it go to your head. Yes, ma'am. 6 weeks later. The Naval Special Warfare Center at Coronado was where SEALs were forged. Riley stood in front of a classroom full of BUD/S candidates, young men and women in week 14 of the most brutal military training in the world. She'd been asked to give a guest lecture on adaptability and survival in unexpected circumstances. The Navy Cross on her dress uniform was brand new, awarded just days earlier. Morning, she started. I'm Petty Officer First Class Riley Bennett. I'm here to talk about what happens when operations don't go according to plan. The candidate stared at her with the exhausted thousand-yard stare of people who hadn't slept properly in months. 3 months ago, I was on an operation in Colombia. Intelligence gathering. Supposed to be low risk. Infiltrate, copy files, exfiltrate, standard stuff. She paused. It went wrong. I got caught. Cartel enforcers zip-tied my hands, dragged me to a rooftop, and threw me off an 8-story building. That got their attention. Eyes widened, exhaustion forgotten momentarily. 80-foot fall, hands bound, no parachute, no safety equipment, just me, gravity, and 2.5 seconds before I hit the ground. She let that sink in. Anyone here think that's survivable? Silence. It is. I'm standing here, so obviously it is. But here's the question. How? She clicked to the first slide. Physics calculations of terminal velocity and impact force. You survive by understanding that everything is physics. Falling is just controlled descent if you approach it correctly. She walked them through it. Body positioning, momentum control. Using environmental features, the awning, to break the fall. Rolling impact distribution, pain management, staying operational despite injuries. The point isn't that you should jump off buildings, she said. The point is that Bud S trains you to function in situations that kill untrained people. You learn to stay calm under pressure, to analyze problems systematically, to use physics and technique instead of panicking. One candidate raised his hand. Petty Officer, did you know you'd survive when you jumped? I knew I had a better chance of surviving the fall than surviving the bullet they were about to put in my head. So I controlled what I could control, my body position, my trajectory, my impact technique. Everything else was just physics. But what if there hadn't been an awning? Then I'd have looked for something else. Power lines, fire escape, adjacent building, something to break the fall or change my trajectory. SEALs adapt. We don't accept that situations are impossible. We find solutions. She clicked to the next slide, a photo of the Medellin rooftop. The cartel learned something that day. They learned that throwing a SEAL from a building doesn't solve your problem. It just creates a SEAL with a personal grievance and nothing left to lose. They learned that SEALs don't need parachutes to survive. We just need training and the will to use it. The lecture continued. She walked them through the escape, the firefight, the extraction. Not to brag, that wasn't the point, but to show them that everything they were learning in BUD/S had real-world application in situations that seemed impossible. After class, several candidates approached her. Petty Officer Bennett, that was incredible. It was survival. And everything you need to survive impossible situations, you're learning right now in this training. Pay attention, push through, because someday you might be the one falling from a building, and you'll need to remember that SEALs don't panic. We adapt. Did it hurt? The fall? Like hell. Broke 3 ribs and a collarbone, but pain is just information. It tells you what's damaged. It doesn't stop you from functioning if you don't let it. She smiled. And the pain was worth it because I completed the mission, extracted successfully, and lived to tell the story. That's what matters. One female candidate hung back until the others left. Petty Officer Bennett, I'm in week 14. Hell Week almost broke me. Sometimes I think about quitting. Everyone thinks about quitting. Hell Week is designed to make you think about it. But you didn't quit, even when they threw you from a building. I didn't quit because quitting wasn't an option. The mission wasn't complete. My team needed extraction. I had intelligence that would save lives. Riley met her eyes. Find your reason. The reason you're here. The reason you're willing to suffer through training that seems designed to destroy you. Hold on to that reason when everything hurts and quitting seems easier. That's what SEALs do. What's your reason? Riley thought about the rooftop, the fall, the cartel enforcers who'd assumed she'd die, the reputation she'd built as La Sombra Americana, the ghost who couldn't be killed by something as simple as gravity. My reason is that someone has to be willing to do impossible things. Someone has to be the person who doesn't quit even when they're thrown from an 8-story building. Might as well be me. She adjusted her sling. The collarbone was healing, but slowly. Find your reason. Hold on to it, and you'll make it through this training. I believe that. The candidate nodded, determination replacing the exhaustion in her eyes. Thank you, Petty Officer. Riley watched her go, then looked out at the ocean where BUD/S candidates were being put through surf torture, a training evolution designed to push them past their breaking point in freezing water. She'd been through that. She'd been through all of it. Hell Week, drown-proofing, surf torture, the crushing physical and mental stress that forged SEALs from ordinary humans. And then she'd been thrown from an 8-story building and survived it using nothing but the training they gave her. That's what SEALs were. Not superhuman, not invincible. Just trained to a level that made the impossible look routine. Trained to survive situations that killed everyone else. Trained to adapt when things went wrong and find solutions where normal people saw only death. They'd thrown her from a rooftop thinking gravity would finish the job. They'd learned that SEALs don't need parachutes to survive. They just need training, physics, and the absolute refusal to die easy. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, you can subscribe to see more incredible stories like this one.